What's better than a great horror movie? A great horror trilogy. So today, I want to give you my 5 favorite horror trilogies of all time. Let's get it. Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Nick here, and today I wanted to give you guys my top 5 horror trilogies of all time. Now, before we get started with this, I have to say a few things. One of those is that these are my favorite. I'm not saying they are the best. I'm also acknowledging that some of these series did not end after the third movie. But you can look at those 3 movies as a self-contained trilogy in and of themselves and grade it as a trilogy. Now, before I get into my top 5, I want to give a couple honorable mentions here. And first, I want to say Poltergeist. Look, I love Poltergeist as much as the next person, and I love the second film as well. Having said that, the third film suffers, and a lot of it is through no fault of its own. What happened with Heather O'Rourke was absolutely tragic, and it really impacted the finished product that we got with that movie. So at times, it comes across as very incomplete. Another one I want to mention is the Firefly trilogy. Now, the first 2 movies, absolutely love them. However, I don't think it needed to be a trilogy, and that's the problem, and that's why I didn't make this list, because 3 from Hell, at best, is just a greatest hits light version. It's nowhere near as entertaining or engaging, and it just kind of leaves you wanting something different. You're glad some of the characters came back, but not in the way you really would have wanted them to. The last honorable mention is the Psycho trilogy. Look, I will maintain that Psycho through Psycho 4 are all varying degrees of great to very good. This is a series that has been slept on. Just like criminally slept on. They're all very good movies, and they're very different in a lot of ways. I don't care for the remake, but literally everything else Psycho is like money to me. And I think it is criminal that so many people have not seen more than just the first movie, and I implore you to go check out the other movies in this series if you haven't, because they are absolutely worth your time. But without further ado, let's get into my top 5. And starting out at number 5 might surprise some of you guys, because you know this is not a subgenre that I am particularly fond of, and that is the Dead trilogy. George A. Romero's The Dead trilogy. Look, I'm not a big zombie fan. I never have been. You have to do something really unique or really interesting for me to like a zombie movie. Well, George A. Romero did that with this entire trilogy. The one that I think about the most, that I have the fondest memories of from growing up, is Day of the Dead. And it's specifically because of Bub. I don't know what it was, but I was just so endeared to Bub, and I watched the movie over and over and over again as a kid. Never really freaked me out. If anything, it just intrigued me. It interested me. So, that movie in and of itself holds a special place in my heart. But it is undeniable that Night of the Living Dead and Dawn of the Dead are 2 of the greatest, if not the greatest, zombie films ever. So if Day of the Dead is just a little bit weaker than those 2, you put all 3 of those together in a trilogy, especially for someone like me that doesn't really care for zombies. I mean, come on. It's incredible. From front to back, it is an absolutely great trilogy, and I feel like, speaking as someone that, again, doesn't particularly love this subgenre, I do not think you can go wrong with this trilogy of movies. Coming in at number 4 is going to be the Evil Dead trilogy. The Evil Dead 2, and Army of Darkness. Now, for some people, this is going to be a contentious pick, and I understand that, because there's a lot of people that are not big fans of Army of Darkness. It's either you love that movie or you hate that movie. I'm someone that loves the movie. I'm also someone that loves literally every Evil Dead movie. Like, I have not watched one that I haven't liked. So please keep making them. These 3 movies, although the first 2 movies, like the second one is in some ways like making like a retelling of the first movie, it then after the opening sequence goes into new territory and does very much feel like a sequel to the first movie. And then by the end of Evil Dead 2, it's been zany, over the top, and weird, and it goes way off the deep end, setting up Army of Darkness. So as crazy as some of these moments in these 3 movies can get, they all line up. Like, everything is foreshadowed. We know where we're going by the time we get there. So I feel like that's really important to take into account when it comes to this trilogy. And you get a lot of great tonal differences and shifts in these movies. The first movie is a straight up low budget isolation horror film, and it works in spades. The second one is that in moments, and then in other moments, a dark comedy that is wildly over the top with incredibly memorable imagery. And the third one has some of those moments, but really leans into the slapstick and the zany and the goofy, while also having incredibly weird and haunting visuals, but they all work together. And that is crazy, to have three movies that can range from such different tones at times to work as a cohesive trilogy. The Evil Dead does that. So The Evil Dead is absolutely number 4 on my list. Coming in at number 3 is going to be Saw. Saw 1, Saw 2, and Saw 3. Look, honestly, they could have finished Saw after Saw 3, and I would have been totally fine. I would have been completely satisfied. Like, I would have never needed any more. I personally believe that Saw 3 is the best Saw film, and part of that is because all of the events from the first two movies culminate in this one. You get way more story, way more character development. There's so much more to explore here. There is so much meat on the bone. And the themes that the third one plays with are really heavy stuff that really impact you as the viewer. Now, Saw is an incredible movie. That ending alone blew people's minds. I still remember my reaction when I saw Tobin Bell stand up from that bathroom floor. I was like, you've got to be shitting me. Not even kidding. That alone, even if you didn't care for the rest of the movie, that twist alone at the end is like, okay, that's pretty damn good. And then Saw 2. Look, Saw 2 is the weakest of the three movies, but it's still a really good movie. It's a great performance by Tobin Bell and Donnie Wahlberg, and that back and forth cat and mouse antagonistic relationship is just so great. Like, watching it, it is intoxicating. It really, really pulls you in. You want answers, but you also don't want it to end. And there's a fun game going on the side there, but it's really more about the Tobin and Donnie Wahlberg situation. So Saw 1, 2, and 3 are a great front to back story. It is a great trilogy, and it comes smack dab in the middle of my top 5 horror trilogies. Coming in at number 2 is going to be one that is new, that came out of nowhere, and that absolutely knocked me on my ass with the first movie. And that is Ti West's X trilogy. Look, again, very similar to what I said with the Evil Dead movies. All three movies, in a lot of ways, are massive tonal shifts, but they feel like a complete cohesive arc for characters and for themes that are played with throughout all three movies. Mia Goth is incredible in all of them. I personally believe you still should watch them ex Pearl Maxine, because I feel like knowing what you're going into Pearl with, that knowledge from X, I feel like is important. I feel like it adds more layers to Pearl, and you're kind of caught up. Now, Pearl is very, very much a character study, a psychological horror film. It is not about grossing you out or making you jump. It is a slow burn in every sense of the word, and it's led by incredible performances, namely Mia Goth. You've got X, which a lot of the movie is a slow burn, because Ti West loves to do that. But once it gets into the back half of the movie, it is a throwback grindhouse slasher movie, and gorehounds will absolutely love it. It's masterfully shot, the music, the editing, it's incredible. And then Maxine is very much an 80s crime thriller mystery with elements of a slasher while also being goofy and over the top. It marries so many themes perfectly together. And in describing all three of those movies, you're like, whoa, those all sound like wild shifts, and they are. So it's incredible that the three of them can work so well as a trilogy. Look, when Ti West initially said in February that he was like, oh, you know what? I might have another idea for an X movie. I was like, please give me more. But now that he's backed off of that, I can take a step back and go, if this is the end, that's okay. Because honestly, this is one of the greatest horror trilogies I've ever seen, clearly, because it's at number 2. And it's a new trilogy. Like, I never would have thought that. If you would have told me 5 years ago, hey, a horror trilogy is going to come out over a span of 2 years in the near future, and it's going to be your number 2 ever, I'd be like, yeah, okay. There it is. I mean, what do you want me to say? Now, before we get into number 1, some of you guys, knowing that I'm a Halloween fan, were probably going, oh, is the David Gordon Green trilogy going to come in here? Or the Thorn trilogy? No, because as much as I have reverence for some of those movies, particularly the Thorn trilogy, they're not as good on the whole as these other trilogies I've mentioned. I would argue that all of these trilogies I've mentioned in this top 5 are 4 to 4.5 star movies at the bare minimum. And I feel like if you can do that for 3 movies in a row, you've done something great there. But with all that being said, this might surprise some of you. Shout out to my buddy Mark. I know you're going to like this one. My number 1 horror trilogy of all time, and personally, I would say is probably and arguably the best, objectively, Alien. Yes, Alien. And again, very, very different tonally at times. Look, Ridley Scott's Alien is a straight up horror movie. And if you go back and watch it now, you might go, wow, this is actually kind of slow. It really is taking a while to get there. Yeah, it absolutely is. But it is so worth it because the dread, the claustrophobia, the fear that you feel, it is palpable. And Alien delivers. And by the time you get to the end and stuff really starts to hit the fan, it's so worth it. It's been earned. Aliens, look, it's Jim Cameron. You know how Jim Cameron does. He is the master of sci-fi action. That's just one of his strong suits, if not his strong suit. And Aliens is no exception to that rule. It's bigger, it's louder, it's crazier, not so much a horror movie, much more an action movie with horror elements. One of the greatest sci-fi action movies of all time. And a lot of people would say it's the best Alien film. I'm still going to go with Alien, but I can hear the argument and I understand it. And then Alien 3. A movie that a lot of people have really come around to as the years have gone on, and thanks in large part to the assembly cut. Look, Alien 3 is a vastly different movie than the first 2 movies in a lot of ways, but it is still a great story, a great performance by Sigourney Weaver, and I would say actually delves more into the horror elements like the first one did. It's more of a return to form in some ways to Alien than Aliens was, but Alien 3 has been criminally underrated for so long, so I'm really happy to see it get the love that it's getting now. Now, I'm not a hater of Alien Resurrection. I never have been. I can find some enjoyment in Resurrection, but overall, it's just a meh movie. But let's ignore that, because Aliens, Alien 3, the greatest horror trilogy, front to back, in my opinion, of all time. But I want to hear down below what your guys' top 5 horror trilogies are. What do you think I left off? What are you surprised that I didn't mention? I'm sure some of you watched this and you went, huh, you zigged when I thought you were going to zag. I want to hear all that down below in the comments section. Make sure to leave a like on this video. Subscribe to my channel if you have not already. This is Nick at the Lost River Drive-In, and I'm pulling out.